Reggie, Paul spent a lot of time traveling during his ministry. And we base a lot of our interpretation of his letters on the fact that we think he really knew his readers intimately so that he could kind of custom craft his letters to their particular circumstances. Did he really have a chance to get to know the people that well, or were his relationships more just superficial?
Well, that's a good question to ask, Graham, and it's worth wondering about, because if he doesn't in fact have the relationships that he seems to have or aspired to, well, then it is hard to take this pastoral side of him quite as seriously. Yeah. But it really does look like he worked hard to develop relationships within the cities that he ministered into. In fact, I think that was one of the lessons that he learned from the first missionary journey, was that these relationships are really important. In the first missionary journey, he gets bounced from town to town largely because he's not able to establish the deep, lasting relationships in the cities. And in the second missionary journey, that does look like it's a change in philosophy. And so you have him staying in Lydia's home in Philippi, for instance. And in Corinth, he works with his hands. And, and he winds up working with Priscilla and Aquila. And the workshop back then was not like, going to a factory, punching your clock, and the union, boss making sure you get your work done and not talk. Would have been a family shop, and people would have been coming in and they would have been talking a lot. Corinth, the book of Acts says he lived there for 18 months, and he had plenty of time to develop relationships there. Later on, he'll stay in Ephesus for 3 years. And while he's ministering there, then people go out from him. So he does stay where he can for as long as he can, to not just get individuals saved, but to get a church really grounded and founded. And even in the places where in the first missionary journey he didn't get a long chance to stay, he went back to those cities after he got to Derbe, because he felt like it was important for them to get a church structure in place. And in the second missionary journey, he goes back to one of those cities where Timothy was from, and he felt like he had gotten to know this young man well enough in the first missionary journey to grab him and incorporate him into his ministry. And all the way through his ministry, he's not traveling by himself. He's traveling with other people. He's constantly he lives his theology in relationship, and people are going out from him and coming to churches, and leaders of these churches are coming back to him. And one of the ways that you can tell that he really aspires to relationship and to minister out of relationship is the 2 letters that he writes to churches that he'd never been to are Colossians. Well, it's 3 letters, because he writes 2 letters to the church at Colossae, Colossians and Philemon, and the 3rd letter to the church at Rome. The 2 letters that he writes to the churches, Philemon, he writes to Philemon himself, but when he writes to the church at Colossae, precisely because he's never been there, he mentions every person that he knows that's in that church. Same thing with the letter to the Romans. He is looking to help them come together as a church. And he has this whole chapter of greetings to people in the church at Rome. So he's keenly interested in relationships. He lives them as much as he can, and he will, even in his letter writing itself, he'll try to establish relationships that he doesn't yet have.
So Paul's not like just some sort of itinerant preacher who goes places for just a couple days. He really puts down roots.
Yeah, again, because he's looking to build a church. He's not looking to get people to just sign a pledge card and then him just go on. The whole process of traveling would have been slow, walking, he, right, going on ship, and his world was just a very much more social world than what we might think about today of, missionaries just kind of flying in, getting a big
That's
crowd
true.
together and then going on to the next one. Very different pace and a very different relational network that he's working out of.